So you started with the Wim Hof method, cold exposure, breath work. And what was your experience of that? Was it apparently it worked, right? As you describe it, you wanted something to kind of shake you or shock you out of your old habits. Apparently that worked. What was your experience of that?
So I remember watching a video where somebody was saying, right, if you're going to do cold showers, that's how I started. Then you need to go easy. You need to take it easy. You need to start off warm and then gradually turn it cold. And I remember thinking at the time, that's not what I want. I don't want it to be easy. I don't want it to be a gradual change. I want it to be a shock. So I remember going into the shower, immediately turning it as cold as I possibly could and just enduring it. And of course, when you first start doing cold showers, you can't help but scream and shout. You can't help but that involuntary shiver as your body's trying to deal with it. I didn't know how to get used to it. I didn't know any of the techniques that you can use. But I was happy to do it. But I remember that feeling immediately afterwards. In the shower, it was endurance. Out the shower, it was this, wow, I feel amazing. But the biggest thing for me was the breath work. When I started doing the Wim Hof method breath work, I remember, I think it was about a month in, and this is the point where your body's still trying to adapt to these changes, and it's flooding you with endorphins, with other positive neurochemicals. And I remember this one morning where I literally wanted to go outside and scream to the world, I feel effing great, as in, yes, it was this, it was almost like this. I was starting to be evangelical about it. I was starting to say, guys, you should do this. My friends, family, and obviously everybody was ignoring me because why would they listen to, a friend or a family member give them this weird advice? But yes, I remember those early days. It was lovely.
Yeah, and also you're in the UK, where I imagine the cold shower is actually pretty freezing cold. Because I'm in Portugal right now. The
Yes.
cold water here is, it's wimpy.
Yes, the cold showers are cold. It's interesting actually because I've experienced this recently in another house where the cold shower just didn't get cold enough and it frustrated me. But very early on, I moved to the garden hose anyway. In other words, because I was thinking, no, I want it to be full on, So I wanted it even in winter, whilst it's snowing. I wanted, if I could get the hose to work, if it wasn't frozen up, I wanted that, that kind of cold. And I remember listening to David Goggins at the time as well. And of course, David Goggins, you're probably aware of him. I didn't like him at first because he's always every other word is F this, F that, and it's a quite a it's a very deliberate language that I couldn't really tune into. When I then heard his story, I totally related and understood where he was coming from, and then I really listened to what he was saying. And of course, a lot of what he's saying is about a lot of his message is about callousing the mind, and I think that's what I was looking for. I wanted to callous the mind. In other words, develop this resilience.
Yeah, it's very interesting to me. So I've done a lot of cold exposure in various different ways as well. And it is interesting to me that it seems to be a lot about the attitude and what you describe, where you want the cold. I think that the thing that makes one suffer the most in cold exposure is wanting to avoid the cold. You get into an ice bath and you're kind of trying to escape the ice. That's going to make you suffer. But if you go, yes, I actually want this, and your attitude is even, I want more of this, make it more cold.
I think you can apply that to lots of different things that in which you are enduring. But also, I've discovered that when it comes to cold therapy, men and women deal with it differently. Women are far better often because they relax into it, they breathe into it. Men, they adopt this kind of very masculine approach, and they try to muscle their way through it. So they're tense and God, just keep going. And but that doesn't work, of course. It's you're negatively affecting your physiology by doing that. Whereas if you learn how to breathe through it, slow down your breathing. If you're in the cold shower, you aim the cold to the back of your neck, and that kicks in the mammalian dive reflex that slows down your heart rate. If you're in ice, it really is more a case of just longer exhales, which kicks it. They kick in the parasympathetic nervous system, which again makes you feel calm and relaxed. So then you will be, and that's what women tend to be. I know I'm generalizing, but that tends to be what happens. Because men, it's a bit like when you take a man climbing. His instinct is to use his arms. to muscle his way up. But of course, then his arms blow halfway up because he's not using the right muscle groups to get up there. We have this stupid instinct that it feels like the right thing to do. Whereas, if we're able to shut off that instinct, you can apply this to lots of things. Shut off the instinct, breathe your way through it, and you'll find. If you look at fighters, for example, in the UFC, those that are able to calm the mind beforehand rather than get into the cage and go, "Argh." If you think about it, when you're in that angry state, you're in fight flight. The problem with fight flight is you become irrational. Much of your brain is shut down. If you stay calm in a fight, you've got all this intelligent brain and the subconscious that will allow you to flow through it, and therefore you'll be able to react quicker.
It's interesting. Even just talking to you makes me want to jump in an ice bath again. So you're clearly having that effect.
we should do a podcast in an ice bath, perhaps.
In an ice bath, yeah. There's a really funny. There's a YouTuber called Juji, who has done interviews where he puts people in an ice bath and he interviews them until they can't stand it anymore. It's very funny, and they even do like sitting in an ice bath and eating ice cream while talking, and you just see
brilliant. I love it.
freaking out, and it's very funny.